Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar of today. Today we'll talk about drafting for compliance, and we'll share with you the best practices in drafting standards in support of the Low Voltage Directive. My name is Els. I'm moderating the webinar in the background, and as usual, all the participants are muted, but you do have the possibility to submit your questions in the Q&A panel, as you can see it in the Zoom panel on your screen. So that's what the Zoom panel looks like. Should you not find it, please have a look at the Q&A. Should you be on X, Blue Sky, or LinkedIn, please feel free to talk about the subject with the hashtag training for standards. So I think then on the next slide, we have the agenda for today. I would like to give the floor right away to my colleague, Frederic, who will go through the topics of the agenda. Thank you, Frederic. Yours.
Thank you, Els. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar dedicated to the LVD. So, agenda for today, the welcome words from Els. The next presenter will be the European Desk Officer in charge of the Low Voltage Directive. Then I will present some development processes and writing agreement. Why we do process of and then the core part of the will be done by Hendrix, and it will be about best practice draft harmonized standard in support. And we will end the webinar with a Q&A where we will try to address all your questions. So the and please, I will for the introduction.
Good morning. I also have some trouble with the sound. Yeah, you can hear me?
I think they mean they cannot hear as well. Is that true?
Yeah, also for me, I have some trouble. I couldn't hear Frederic passing the floor. I just saw the screen. Do you hear me well? If I can start, maybe. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I'm Tasos Herakleos. I'm the desk officer for the Low Voltage Directive. I will just give a brief introduction of the LVD, which mainly covers health and safety risks. If we can move to the next slide, please. So the scope of the LVD covers only electrical and electronic devices between 50 and 1000 voltage range, and but of course there are some other exceptions that we should be careful of. Lifts, explosive atmospheres, and equipment that have exceptions due to other EU legislations. The next slide, please. The LVD is a total harmonization directive. There are no notified bodies under the LVD. So harmonized standards are voluntary, and if they apply, they provide a presumption of conformity. But something to always have in mind that public authorities monitor the compliance. And next one, please. And this slide relates basically to what we are talking about today. That's some points of discussion when regards to the LVD. You can use the CENELEC Guide 32 for risk assessment. Any references to Annex ZA should be complete and dated. There always should be an appropriate level of granularity when it comes to Annex ZZ. For when assessing multi-part standards, we must ensure that all parts are compliant. Standards that apply to other several directives simultaneously must also be taken into consideration. And Also, when referring to measurement uncertainties, there is no clause required, but if needed, it should be normative. And also routine tests, they shall never be informative. This was a shorter introduction, but of course, the next speakers will dive into more detail into similar and those topics. That was it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasios. So before I proceed, do you hear me correctly?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I will proceed. And if you don't hear me, please let us know. So I will give some key reminders related to the processes and some important drafting rules for developing harmonized standards. So the first is about the innovative process for homegrown harmonized standards. I will not spend a lot of time on it because most of the standards developed in support of the LVD are developed in parallel. But the innovative process has two main pillars. It's the mature draft concept. We have kind of the same concept for standard developed in parallel where we have the CD draft. And so the mature draft is a draft that is ready for inquiry, and the mature draft assessment is mandatory. And then there's the CCMC quality check. And the goal of the quality check is to help you identify elements in the draft or the related annexes that could potentially lead to a lack of compliant assessment. And this quality check is done using the common checklist that is the same document used by the HAS consultant when assessing your standard. So this is the timeline of the innovative process for homegrown. So you see there's the first quality check on the mature draft assessment, QC1, that is mandatory, and then the A1, that is the mature draft assessment, that is mandatory as well. And then the inquiry assessment is optional if there's a lack of compliance at mature draft. And for the formal vote part, it's the same principle. You have a quality check mandatory on the informal vote draft, and then the formal vote assessment. And the last assessment, the last confirmatory assessment, is optional, and it's there only if there's a lack of compliance assessment of formal vote. I will not spend time on this slide. Those are the operational instructions for the TCs to request the quality check. In a nutshell, you have to contact HSC, send an email to HSC to request the quality check, and then we will take care of requesting the assessment, but I'll leave the slide for your information. So again, about when to request an assessment. So the mature draft, that is mandatory, following a quality check on the mature draft. If there's a lack of compliant assessment and there's the inquiry formal vote, same thing for the formal vote part. When there's the pre-formal vote assessment that is mandatory, and if there's a lack of compliance, then there's the LCA assessment, last confirmatory assessment. So in the development of a harmonized standard, there's a maximum of 4 assessments per work item. The LCA is a full assessment, but we hope that it will become exceptional because of the CCs. And it's not possible to request an assessment on publication. The parallel process, so there's a new process for standard developed in parallel. It's in place for years now. And for standards developed in parallel, what is key is the consensus building at European and international level. And very important is a strong communication and coordination between the CENELEC TC and the IEC TC. And so for harmonized standards, the same applied worldwide and provide presumption of conformity to European legislation. And so this new process, the intention of the new process is to improve the timely delivery of parallel IC harmonized standard and to avoid blocked draft standards before publication, as we had the case before. It could happen that because the harmonization starts late, the project received a lack of compliant assessment at LCA with major comments related to the technical content, and because of that, the project is blocked. And so the goal here is really to start earlier to avoid having project block at the end. And as well, one important element of this new process is to minimize the interference with development at international level. That's why we focus only on the CD stage. So this is the process. When there's a CD at IEC level, then if we have time, we perform a quality check on the European elements. And as well, we request a CD assessment on the CD draft. If there's no CD, obviously, we will not be able to perform the quality check and request the CD assessment. And as well, if there's a CD, the CENELEC TC shall be ready to deliver the European annexes, because without the European annexes, we will not be able to perform the quality check and or to request the CD assessment. So here again, it's important to start early and as well to develop the European annexes in parallel with the CD draft development at IC level. And so key points for the standard developed in parallel. So again, start the process as early as possible. So the CENELEC TC is invited to closely follow the work at international level and to develop the European annexes, so Annex ZD and Annex ZZ, in parallel with the CD draft. The new process applies only if there's a CD available and if the European elements, are available early enough. And the communication here is really key. Communication between the CENELEC TC and the ICTC, the communication is key to follow the development of the CD draft so that everything is ready for the quality check and or for the CD assessment. And the common checklist for drafts developed in parallel, the common checklist is not mandatory, but it's highly recommended because this will help you check what elements of your draft are important for the assessment. It seems we still have some sound issues. We are trying to fix that. Yeah, I will proceed. Some key draft reminders. Today we are looking at the main reason for lack of compliance. And Ivan will come back to that, but the main reason for lack of compliance today are mostly related to the Annex Z or to issues related to normative references. And so what is key really is to perform a self-assessment using the common checklist and use the common checklist while drafting the standard possibly and the European annexes so that you will be able to identify what elements are key for the presumption of conformity. When drafting requirements, you have to draft clear and verifiable provisions to avoid interpretations of the requirements. For the normative references, Anastasios talked about it, Ivan will come back to it. The normative references shall be dated, active, and published when your harmonized standard is made available. And as well, possibly, it's recommended to refer to a specific clause within the normative reference instead of using the complete normative reference. So this will avoid issues related to chains of normative references. So the best practice is to have your normative reference dated, active, and refer to a specific clause within the normative reference when possible. And finally, we have a lot of guidance documents. I know we have there's a lot of things to read, but please use the guidance documents that are available. For example, the guidance document on the use of normative references in a harmonized standard. This will help you know what are the rules, and this will help you avoid mistakes that could be easily avoided. And as well, it's not written here, but I would invite you to engage with the HAS consultant. So when you receive an assessment report, please engage with the HAS consultant. EY Emilia will mention, it is mentioned in one of the slides, how to contact the HAS consultant. So I really invite you to contact the HAS consultant when you receive an assessment report to be able to clarify the comments and to help you improve your drafts. Voilà, I put some useful links for you to go through. Do your homework. You have a lot of documents and guidance documents and webinars that are built to help you draft harmonized standards. Voilà, that's it for my part. I will now leave the floor to EY for the processes and overview of the sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederic, for the presentation. Just to check if I have control. Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Emilia Paulos, and I'll be giving a brief overview of the HAS system from EY, HAS support side, and the key processes that we go through in the system. So I'm the HAS operations coordinator. So this means that I do, together with my colleague Milko, mostly we do the daily operations in terms of managing the mailbox, handling the meeting requests. And we are supported by a team of 4 other colleagues, including Dan, who's also here today, to support us in the management of the project. Then a quick overview of all the HAS consultants who are involved in the LVD sector. We have Ivan Hendricks who will be providing the presentation to you today after this one. I don't know if I have full control over the presentation. Yes, okay, it works now, sorry. Then we also have a few other HAS consultants, including Christian Maas, Jecht Maas, and Miroslav Kristolik, who are also, I believe, in the meeting today, following along. And before we started, just a brief reminder of all the key stakeholders involved. So we as EY HAS support are sort of the coordinator, the coordinating body between the other stakeholders, including the European Commission and the European Standardization Organizations, including CCMC here today. And you as technical committees and the working groups are, of course, a very key stakeholder in the process as well. That's why we appreciate all of you joining today to hear more about some best practices to improve the system and to improve the function of your work overall. In the next slide, we have an overview of all the sectors that we work with in the HAS system. It's quite a lot, but you in the LVD sector is actually our second biggest sector in the system across all sectors. It's followed by, it's preceded by the machinery sector. Machinery and noise sectors are combined. And I believe in the past, since the start of the project, there's been around 300 assessments in the LVD sector alone. So it's our second biggest sector in terms of the number of assessments that we receive. Then just a brief reminder of the HAS project as a service. So we, as HAS support, we provide a service to the Commission in terms of delivering the assessment reports, but it's of course also a service to the European Standardization Organization. And the aim of the work is, of course, to increase the compliance of the harmonized standards and increase the rate of the publication of references in the official journal of the EU. The main aims, main objectives are to summarize the typical compliance concerns in the draft standards and eventually to reduce the rate of non-compliance across the draft standards that you develop. We provide targeted training to the HAS consultants mostly, but also we work together with the European Standardization Organizations and provide some trainings like this one. And then we coordinate regularly with the European Commission to about the coordination processes and overall functions of the system. And we, of course, we support the European Commission in the efforts to reduce the number of non-cited harmonized standards. And my main responsibility in the operations of the project is to make sure that all the HAS consultants have the right resources available for their assessments. So we make sure that their time is really only spent on performing the assessments, so ensuring that they have all the documents that are necessary for the assessment, and making sure that they have all the information that they need from the TCs. Then a brief overview of the process overall. So you, as technical bodies, you perform the self-assessment of the standard. Then we receive it as an assessment request from the European Standardization Organization. We then provide the assessment request to the house consultant who checks the standard according to our template that we've developed. Once the consultant completes the assessment, we have an internal quality review system. We have 3 quality reviewers who go through and check the quality of all the assessments. And they provide either a green light, a red light, or a yellow light outcome. If it's a yellow or red light, it means something in the assessment still needs to be changed, and then it goes back to the house consultant for review, and they address the issues and then send it back. And once we have a green light from the quality review team, then it gets sent back to CEN and CENELEC and to the commission as well for completion. Then, so Frédéric already went over the 4 stages at which you can request an assessment of your standards. The first stage is the committee draft, then it's inquiry and formal vote, and then the last confirmatory assessment. On our side, we also have one more stage, that is when the commission asks for a final verification assessment. This is usually done after it has already received a compliance outcome and the commission just wants to have a final verification. Just to give a recap of the role of the house consultant, so they can perform the assessments themselves, and they work in support of, but they don't represent the commission. So we, as EY, all house consultants are contracted by EY, so not the commission. And their role is also partly to convey the commission's positions to the technical committees and the European standardization organizations. So this is usually in the form of a meeting. The consultant can convey the position of the commission in the meetings. But important to note is that in these meetings, the point is not for the consultant to modify or address any changes in the report after it has already been submitted and completed. So the house consultants really cannot contribute to the standards development either. And that's just something that we like to clarify. And then finally, another important thing to note is that the commission, of course, they consider the outcome of the assessment performed by the house consultant, but they're not bound by the decision at the end. So they're not bound by the decision of the house consultant in their decision to publish or not the standard. Then just to give a brief overview of the more operational side of the system. So here we have an overview of the different stages at which the assessments in the LVD sector have been requested. So we see that the majority of assessments are requested at the inquiry and formal vote stage, but also quite a few are requested at the committee draft stage. And this is something that we, of course, try to encourage and have encouraged the TCs to do, to request assessments much earlier in the drafting process, to make sure that the compliance rate at later stages, that there's a higher chance of compliance early on in the draft. Because, of course, if you request an assessment at an early stage, it's much easier to address the changes and to revise the draft later on in the process. Some more reminders is that in case of the lack of compliance outcome, the TCs must wait until the next stage of the assessment of the voting process to request a new assessment. So this means that it cannot be addressed in meetings. The changes cannot be only addressed in the meetings with the consultant. And in between the 2 assessment stages, the TCs can request a meeting with the consultant, as we've already mentioned, to receive some clarification on the comments that were received and on anything that might not be clear in the assessment. But again, it's not, the point of the meetings is not to modify the report. And then here we would like to just give an overview of the timeliness. So one of our KPIs as our own internal system is to make sure that all of it, we as EY receive it from CCMC to the moment it is uploaded, it is sent back to the the European standardization organizations and sent to the Commission. So it's not, we don't mean 35 days for the consultant itself to perform the assessment. It's really from start to end. And as you can see, as you probably already know, there was quite some backlog issues at the start of the project because of the gap in between contracts. So in 2022 and 2023, this timeliness, it was difficult to meet this KPI of 35 days. But in the meantime, the backlog has been cleared and the timeliness rate has been improving steadily. Of course, for 2025, there are still some ongoing assessments, so it's not the final figures just yet. But it does show that we have been improving a lot in sticking to this 35 days. Of course, there are always exceptions. There are some complex issues that might take up some more time. There are sometimes if we receive batches of standards or a series to assess at once, it can of course take a bit more time to complete the process. But in general, the timeline has been improving steadily. Then, just to give an overview of the compliance outcomes across the LVD sector, we see that around around 3/4 of the assessment requests that we receive do get a non-compliant outcome, a lack of compliance outcome, which is a lot, of course, and we recognize this, but it's also just to know it compares almost, it's the same across a lot of the sectors overall. So it's not that LVD stands out, but this is of course something that we are working to improve. It goes along with requesting assessments at earlier stages to make sure that at least at the later stages there is a higher chance of having a compliant outcome and having the standards cited. And then just the overview of the non-compliance by stages. So again, we can see it at committee draft stage. The compliance outcome is very low, but this is of course to be expected. I don't think it's very reasonable to have a perfectly compliant draft at the very first stage. But we see that as stages go on, the compliance outcomes improve. So this is what we would like to see. Of course, at LCA stage, the compliance rate is still quite low. So there's a bit of room for improvement here in the processes, and just to ensure that that compliance rate increases across its stages. And just to note, this non-compliance data, it's based on data that we have, or reports that we have received since October 2023, because that's when we started using a new reporting template. So it's not of the system of all assessments that have been completed, but the majority of them, let's say. And then just an overview of the continuous improvement that we try to focus on. So it's an ongoing project. It's been going on for a few years, and we do try to improve the system continuously. Some of the things that we try to focus on are avoiding to change the consultants between different assessment stages wherever possible. We also try to improve the speed of resolution when there are discrepancies in assessments. We've worked a lot on trying to improve the coordination between consultants, encouraging meetings among consultants if they're assessing for different sectors, or if we do need to have a different consultant assessing, we do try to make sure that they have all the information that they need. And we encourage regular meetings also with the commission between the consultants and the desk officers. We focus on increased consistency through guidance and training. We organized a few trainings with our quality review team as well, to make sure that the consultants are all on the same page and that the assessments are consistent across sectors. And of course, we encourage the meetings with the TCs to streamline the process and increase the communication with the technical committees. Then just very quickly, I won't cover this whole slide, but as you know, you have the opportunity to request meetings with us consultants. We do try to ask that you request these well in advance and that you provide a good agenda. And again, the consultants can convey the position of the commission to you, but the goal of the meetings is definitely not to revise the report or to contribute to the standard development process. And with that said, I think we are out of time. So thank you for listening. And now I'll pass the floor to Ivan, the HASC consultant, who will provide some best practices.
Thank you, Amelia. First question, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ivan Hendricks. I'm HASC consultant for the LVD. And in today's presentation, I'm just going to request remote control. Hope that's happening. Yeah. Okay, so the agenda for my presentation today is the real HASC consultancy work from our experience. That means that I have made a presentation which has been checked by the other LVD HASC consultants, the name you have given here in the presentation by Amelia. So I have two topics for today. First, which are the top 5 critical findings we see nearly every day in certain LVD standards? And the second topic is technical issues in some of the standards which are still found, and we think that these need to be addressed in the future. So the first issue we can say is the Annex ZZ. It has been already made reference to by Frederick. Annex ZZ and the legal requirements often are not very well linked. So there is no proper linkage between the standards content, the clauses of the standard, and the EU legal requirements. The legal requirements, as you know, basically the 10 safety objectives, as you can find in Annex 1 of the LVD. Some practical examples of non-conformity are missing or vague links between the safety objectives of the LVD, for instance, protection against electric shock, is either not listed in the Annex ZZ or it may not be covered. That can be for some product standards, it can be that it is not covered. But then it should be clear in the scope and mention it in the Annex ZZ that this is the case. Or another problem is that the linking is very general and also to an entire section of the standard, for instance, clause 22, and not to specific supporting technical clauses containing the requirement or the requirement. The buzzword here is really specific. We expect that harmonized standards are to be specific so that the user of the standard is informed about the applicability of the safety objectives of the LVD. Another issue with the Annex ZZ is that sometimes a test method only is not a requirement. That means that normally in a HANA standard, there is the requirement and we have the test method. And these are two separate things. So it must be clear what is the requirement and this must be referred to in the Annex ZZ. Of course, the test method can be added for clarity. That is no point. That can be optionally be done. Another example of incorrect mapping of the Annex ZZ, so that the safety objectives is linked to a clause in the standard that addresses only minor or peripheral aspects of that requirement, instead of the core technical solution. I think this is an obvious and clear non-conformity. Then a second important issue with the harmonized standard is normative references and its state of the art. And in many cases, 36% of the cases, this is a comment we have to make each time we do an assessment. It is an issue which causes frequent growth of non-compliances. Examples are the use, of course, of withdrawn standards. They are not state-of-the-art, or they have been superseded by international standards, IEC standards, and in our case, meaning the document's requirements do not reflect the current state of the art. Also, the reference need to be specific. It has been pointed out already in this seminar. It must point to a specific clause or clauses of the normative references to be applied, rather than making the whole normative reference applicable, which can cause troubles in the future of the standard. Third, to avoid misuse of Annex ZA. Well, it can happen that if there is an amendment to an harmonized standard, that a new normative reference is just listed in the Annex ZA. Of course, this cannot be the case. New normative reference shall be included in clause 2 of the amendment. A fourth important point is that the references are irrelevant. That means that the document includes a normative reference to a standard that is not actually required to prove compliance with the LVD essential requirements or safety objectives, adding complexity without supporting the legal basis. These references should be listed in the biography, which has a special purpose for that. A third issue with harmonized standards is, and very important, are the test and the assessment to prove compliance with the safety objectives. It's often rooted in inadequate and unverifiable methods. Practical examples are ambiguous test criteria. A test method specifies equipment or procedure parameters using vague language. For instance, apply adequate pressure. That means what pressure? Or test until failure is observed. But what means the word failure? So this has to be specific, the buzzword. So without defining measurable objective criteria and making the test result impossible to reproduce reliability. Second example is missing acceptance criteria. A requirement is set, for instance, a temperature or a voltage dielectric test, but the corresponding clause fails to define the clear pass and fail criteria. For instance, maximum permissible temperature range or minimum dielectric strength value, so that it is necessary for an objective assessment. The third example here is selection and of alternative test methods. This shall be avoided. Of course, we know that for LVD testing, which sometimes are not so critical, this can be readily, let's say, complied with. For EMC testing, this will be much more difficult because of the measurement uncertainty in EMC testing is quite sometimes quite high. So for LVD, in any case, there should be one single reference test method identified. Often this is associated to the manufacturer. That means the manufacturer has to test this and this. And it is there overlooked that other actors, such as market surveillance authorities or testing houses, will use the standard too. So what they have to do then? Especially for market surveillance authorities where the burden of proof is there, this can be a very important issue. So selection and determination of alternative test method is something to be looked at very carefully. The fourth issue is related to normative reference, but then they should be dated. It's evident that this should be dated, but of course there can be an exception, but under very justifiable exceptions, it can be discussed with the European Commission, and this is ongoing for some of the harmonized standards currently in use. What is the issue? Undated reference without justification. The standard uses an undated reference, for instance, IEC 60384-14 for capacitors, which implies the use of the latest edition, but without specific justification. For instance, that only the latest edition is relevant. And this prevents legal certainty, as a manufacturer may comply with one edition while a subsequent one which comes later, is legally required. Of course, legal certainty here is not guaranteed. Second, the lack of justification. The document uses an undated reference, and the justification provided, for instance, in the foreword of the standard or in its introduction, is not deemed to be acceptable or does not simply exist, leaving users unclear on the exact version for use for compliance. A very important topic, and we see this regularly in harmonized standards. A third topic of issue is the reminder that if you look at internal regulations 3 of CEN and CENELEC in clause 10.4, it states that undated reference can be used only if 3 conditions are simultaneously met. So an undated reference creates a dynamic link, meaning a new unassessed edition of the reference standard, and could change the requirements and break the legal presumption of conformity. Very important topic. A fifth issue with harmonized standards and our HAS assessment for LVD is about the risk assessment document. Sometimes we see that the risk assessment document is not complete. Some risks are not provided with information, and it is left to us to make an interpretation why this risk is not addressed. So practical examples here are unaddressed foreseeable risk. So where we can judge that certain equipment is susceptible for that risk, it is not addressed. The standard focus only on basic electrical risk, but fails to address reasonable foreseeable risk, for instance, for the product, such as the risk for fire or from internal component failure, or risk associated with predictable user misuse, as required by the LVD. It can be that the safety objectives or risk is not addressed. That can be in some products or component standards, for instance. Then this should be clearly stated in the scope and in the Annex ZZ. Another topic is we sometimes see that Annex ZZ omission. So that in case the standard is intentionally limited in scope, for instance, only covering a power supply for a building in, not in the final equipment. However, Annex ZZ does not clearly state which specific risk related to the LVD, for instance, accessibility of hazardous parts in the final assembly, it does not cover. In this case, when it is a power supply for a building in, of course, when it is for a building in, accessibility is sometimes not to be addressed. And this should be clear in the Annex ZZ specified. This can be done in the third column in the comments column. Then I want to speak to you about the specific technical issues, non-conformities found in candidate harmonized standards under LVD. First, we see in some product standards that they use still the word leakage current, whereas normally, according to IEC 6990, we should use the terms touching current and PE current, protective earth current, because those terms are more specific to the risk of current going through the body of the human body. So standards still refer to the ambiguous term leakage current instead of the precise term defined in IEC 69990, touch current and protective conductive current. Another issue is that some product safety standards fail to consider measurement methods for non-sinus current. That means DC current and
Hello, Ivan. Cannot hear you anymore. Hello, Ivan. We cannot hear you. Sorry.
Ivan, do you hear us? Ivan, we can't hear you anymore. Ivan, can you hear us? Yeah, we don't hear you anymore. I don't know what happened, but we don't hear you anymore. Yeah, we see the slides moving, but we don't hear you anymore. No, I see you try to mute and unmute, but we don't hear you. We lost you. Emilia or Dan, do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I hear you. I've already sent him a message, but
I think it's best to disconnect Ivan and come back,
yeah.
or disconnect at least your audio and come back with the audio. Okay, so apologies for this technical hiccup here. I see that Ivan left us for a moment, so I would like to propose to have a break for the moment. So let's have a 5 minutes break. So we reconvene at 10:53, giving Ivan the time to come back and set up his audio again, and giving you the time to either go to the toilet, have a coffee or tea. Thank you for your understanding.
Okay, so let me repeat the issue with leakage current. Some standards still refer to the ambiguous term leakage current instead of the precise terms defined in IEC 6990, which are touch current and protective conducting current. Sometimes certain conditions in the equipment or for some equipment, those values are not the same. So we need to make this specific requirements. And furthermore, as I explained it already in previously, some equipment have current content which includes high frequency currents, and as let's say the standards have been developed for AC current 50, 60 hertz. This network is reacting differently on currents with a high peak and a very short rise time. So the DC has to consider this, and this can be quite a complex issue. The next issues are about inadequate test specifications. We see in some standards they use transient voltage testing for dielectric testing, for instance. But the specification they provide for the test equipment is not complete. Especially the internal impedance is critical because it should be defined to provide reproducible test results. Because there is an interaction between the source, the test equipment, the medium, the cable, and the test object. And this interaction is quite complex. So it is not easy to predict what is going to happen when you test an equipment. The other topic is measurement uncertainty. Sometimes we see that tolerances are not provided. And then sometimes the TC says that, well, you have to look for IEC guide 115 is all explained there. No, this guide is a method. It does not define any specific tolerances. And neither does the other standard ISO IEC 70025 specify any specific requirements in that regard. So this is something which has to be clarified in the harmonized standard. A third technical issue is functional safety and electromagnetic disturbances. We see that this phenomenon, this hazard, is sometimes neglected in the harmonized standard. Technical committees often assume that electromagnetic disturbances, or EMI, are covered by the EMC product standard, overlooking the need for requirements in their harmonized standards for LVD to ensure safe functioning of equipment so that it is not compromised by electromagnetic interference. This phenomenon is known as functional safety. Because the EMC directive is a functional directive, it has nothing to do with safety. A practical case here is, for instance, a toaster with a built-in electronic timing circuit, which, if not well designed, the timing cycle may be extended by transient on the mains and can cause the bread in the toaster to ignite. Testing has shown in laboratories, I was auditing. Testing has shown that it takes about 5 to 7 minutes to ignite the bread. And this could lead to fire in a kitchen, for instance. This potential hazard has been dealt with in the opinion of the European Commission dated December 2002. So it has to be this functional safety issue when there is electromagnetic disturbances in the game. This has to be addressed in the LVD harmonized standard. Sorry. A last topic is unrealistic temperature and user requirements. A very, let's say, often topic we see in the assessment. A lot of standards, harmonized standards, are still using rise values, temperature rise values for assessing the risk of touching a hot surface, for instance. Of course, if you use rise values and you make a reference to 25 degrees C, then you do not do an absolute temperature risk assessment. The TC must demonstrate compliance with guides like CENELEC Guide 29 that consider burn thresholds and contact periods. Then the issue with the consumer. Sometimes we see that product standards, they fail to address hazards which are related to children. In that case, instructional requirements are frequently too technical to read for children, for instance, or contain unrealistic requirements. For instance, the equipment has to be under constant supervision of children. So the equipment can be used by constant supervision of children, which is, of course, practically not easy to do or very impractical to do, and potentially leading to foreseeable risk. This was my presentation on topics we see in HAS LVD standards. So the floor is now open for any question the TCs might have for this seminar. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ivan. So yeah, let's go to the Q&A. I will go through try to see the questions open, and then we will take some. Ivan, you have access to the Q&A as well, right?
Okay. Yes.
And I invite as well Dan and Emilia to have a look so that we can.
Yes. First question is from Andreas Charles Buck. And his question is that from my point of view, there is only one valid definition of the term measurement and sun coming from the GUM, of course, and the VIM, the vocabulary, ISO IEC Guide 98-3 and ISO Guide 999. Of course, about my presentation here, measurement uncertainty is sometimes fully not addressed. That means that tolerances are not there in harmonized standards. That was my point. Is that a clear answer, or do you have other points to highlight about measurement uncertainty?
Yeah, maybe even you can take another one.
Yeah, I see that Andreas has made it more clearer. Yes, he said that it can be confusing with accuracy, which is not the same. Measurement uncertainty is about statistical evidence that a result is within certain boundaries. And normally, of course, a laboratory is which is accredited according to 70 or 25, does this. But if you have a harmonized standard, then if you have a test method, then the tolerances should be clear. And if there are no tolerances, it's impossible to, let's say, reproduce the testing. It's all about the reproducibility of the testing. Okay. There's another question coming. How to find the relevant standard for the correct wording? There's no global glossary for all technical words. Well, normally there are standards which define terminology. So this has been stated in most of the harmonized standards I have assessed. So I do not know the number of the standard ISO or IEC, but even they are on internet. You can assess them on internet. Or maybe Frederick can answer this question.
Well, I'm not sure. So it's about the glossary for the technical wording?
Yeah, it's about the correct wording. That means terminology used in harmonized standards.
I don't think there's I have to check that offline, but I don't think there's one standard about that.
No. Indeed, that is the right answer. Yeah.
I will ask a question. I see Serge. I will not pronounce your name because I will destroy it. But the question is, the setting up of a workflow process would be an efficient way to improve the assessment. Can you please clarify what you mean? The assessment treatment. Could you please clarify what you mean, Serge? Thank you. And I see in the chat that Christian Mass answered about IEC 60050. It's probably the standard. We were probably, yeah. Thank you, Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are quite some questions about measurement uncertainty.
Yes, I see here a reaction from Reina, Luca. Measurement certainly is not an issue for safety standard. It set the limits. How to measure is another story. The point is that the testing has to be reproducible, and this has to be, let's say, ascertained by the TC in some way. And this can be done by tolerances. It can also be done by measurement uncertainty. Yes, Andreas further discusses the issue of measurement uncertainty. It is a topic that has to be connected to the testing method, right? Yes. Therefore, it gives a measure on how achievable the test limit is, also how reliable a test can be. Indeed, that is what I insisted in. The test should be repeatable, and this should be assured by the TC writing the correct test specification. Okay, then there is another question about, would HAS consider emergency situations in assessing new standard in a more flexible, less critical way when a current harmonized standard is being withdrawn and the market is left with no harmonized standard? I think this is more for the European Commission, or?
Yeah, I think it's a collegial answer. I would say that for this type of case, I will not answer for the European Commission, but from CCMC part, we can prioritize those type of situation. And when there's a harmonized standard that needs to be quality checked or assessed urgently, if the TC inform us about that, we can give priority to that standard and as well ask EY to prioritize it. That's the answer from CCMC, but then for the European Commission or EY, I'll let you answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I can also not answer for the European Commission, of course, but we have in the past prioritized standards on request. So this is a possibility if we get the confirmation from the Commission that there is a need to do so.
Okay. Can we go to next question? Clarification about workflow process. I think something for you, Frederick.
Yes, let me check.
But counting.
So the clarification about workflow process, I mean through a secured IT operated treatment involving all the stakeholders. Are you talking about OSD or something like that, or sorry, but I think I still don't fully understand what you mean. Ivan, could you please address the question from Andreas Scholz about the routine tests?
Can you click up a bit higher than I have?
It's the first question.
We need clear limits for the compliance of a product? No.
No. It's about, according to slide 8, routine tests shall not be informative.
Ivan, you have to scroll up a bit on the chat.
Yes. Can you scroll up, Frederick?
No, the Q&A
it's
part
the Q&A
private.
part.
So you can scroll normally yourself in the window and then see your question.
No, I can't see the question. Let me see.
Okay, I will read it for you. So it's according to slide 8, routine tests shall not be informative. However, routine tests can only be conducted by the manufacturer. Statement of 2010. Considering this, mandatory routine tests are an infringement of the neutrality principle, according to which the application of the standard is free to anybody. How can we handle this European deviation from the IC rules?
Oh, yes. It's about the routine test.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, yeah, this is a hot topic. And we have discussed this also between HAS consultants. Considering this manufacturing routine tests are an infringement of the neutrality principle according to, well, no, in fact, the safety objective 1C is very clear. The equipment should be safe when designed and manufactured. So both phases of the, let's say, the life of the equipment must be covered by the harmonized standard. And it is clear that if you have a design phase and you have a manufacturing phase, that the manufacturer is involved. I cannot see who else can do the testing, because some of the testing can be very critical for dielectric withstand. If you will ask an outsider, a third party, to do the routine test, he may not be aware of any dielectrical constraints within the equipment. So for me, this is very clear that the manufacturer has this task. Yes, Christian Maas made this additional comment or let's say clarification. We need clear limits for compliance of a product. That has to do with the previous discussion on measurement uncertainty. Then we have a question from Darren. And it says, the question is the following: in the LVD guide from 2018, it is mentioned that components like capacitors or resistors are not subject to the LVD, as a risk assessment for the component alone is impossible without considering the system around it. Is this still relevant, valid? How to determine if the subject of a standard is a component or not? Well, I think the guide is very clear that resistors, capacitors are not subject to the LVD. Integrated circuits is another example. But it is another story for transformers, for instance, where they have a clear intended use. So if you read the guidance document, this becomes very clear. So I think here the buzzword is intended use. And can the component, which is then in the scope of the LVD, is safely to use? I hope this question is, this answer is enough for Darren. Okay. Okay, routine test could not be normative as the manufacturing process is not part of a type testing. I have explained this previously. So manufacturing phase is within the LVD. Okay, Christian adds another, let's say, supporting element here. Components can also be sold separately, and CE marking is applied on the component. Indeed, in that case, they have to comply with the LVD. If they are sold only to be installed inside the product production process, well, this is of course the intended use. Then strictly speaking, it can be that LVD is not necessary since it is the end producer responsibility. But at the end, the producer of the component needs also to comply LVD. Well, indeed, if the end user has to comply, probably the component also has to comply to certain LVD requirements. Okay, next question from Jörg. Product routine test should be separate from product standards to the production, which is, for instance, standardized by EN 5106 for 60335. Well, that can be the case. But in the product standard, then it must be clear which standard for routine test you will use. And in some standard, it is not clear, unfortunately. Okay, next question maybe. No open questions?
No, there are.
I see there are still two. One from Luca about part 1 and part 2. If you scroll up, Ivan, probably you can see it.
I have to then click again and give myself access. Okay, now I'll try to. I have no access.
To the Q&A?
Frederick? No, do not have access. Request remote control. Ah, yes, now it works probably.
But it's through the Q&A, Ivan, normally. So if you have the Q&A window open.
It's open.
And are you on the open tab?
Answered.
No, you have to go on the open tab on the left. And there are still three open questions.
Okay. Yes, open question. When part 1 and part 2 are intended to be read together to ensure product compliance, if in part 2 shall incorporate the normative reference from part 1 within clause 2 and Annex ZA. At present, there is no definitive position from the HAS consultant regarding this requirement. That is indeed a a very specific question, and I cannot. I can only give you my interpretation about that. I think we have regular meetings within the Haas consultants, and this topic has to be very clearly and especially analyzed. But what I see with the Part 2 standard, well, indeed, the Part 2 standard, it incorporates the normative references. That means that it makes reference to normative reference in the Part 1. And this is set in the Annex Z introduction, where it refers to Part 1 normative references. I have seen indeed other constructions, and we should be clear about that. And I think we need to discuss this within the Haas consultants group, and maybe also with the European Commission, to make this point clear. As I understood, we have in development a guidance document on Haas elements, which we used for assessing candidate harmonized standard. This document is in development. We will try to, let's say, to make this document available the coming period of time, maybe months, because it is a very useful document. And we will then be more specific to answer this question, Reina. Yes, I can see that Geert has shows this comment from him. Part 1 is a normative reference. No need to repeat its normative reference in Part 2 referring to it. I have seen that in the scope, some TCs, they refer to the use of normative references in Part 1, in Part 2 standard. So I suggest that we come back about Part 1 and Part 2, okay? And then there is an outstanding question that has to be solved by Marisa Pirk. How do we solve the problem of dated references when several interconnected standards are being developed simultaneously? Yeah, there is a possibility in your harmonized to do that by adding a footnote that these standards are in development. They are in project phase or whatever phase they are, and you add that to your harmonized standards. This is a, let's say, common practice which other DCs are using.
And I would complement to that. The only thing is, by the end of the development of your standard, obviously the normative references shall be available, published and available.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we should add also that we have a specific compliance outcome for that.
Yes, Geert added the following solution that for the publication of those standards which you referred to, which are in development, CCMC can be asked to make them available as a package. I've seen that solution also in a previous assessment. Thank you.
So the conditional compliance outcome in the assessments is specifically targeted at this. Just conditional compliance you can only give, the consultants can only give in case there are references to other standards that are developed in parallel. So if this is the case, we will not give a non-compliant outcome for that, but conditional compliance.
Yeah. Okay. There's another question from Rainer. If a standard for electric components does not have any voltage restrictions in the scope, so that is usable for components from 10 volt up to 100,000 kilovolts or even more, is then applicable at all? Well, I think the answer has been provided this morning. The LVD is applicable to 1000 volts, from 50 to 1000 volt AC and 75 to 1500 volt DC. So if your equipment or component uses other voltage ranges, then you have to look at other standards. Yeah, which do not fall in the LVD, of course.
And the last question, I don't know if Ivan, you can address it. I don't know if you see it in the Q&A.
Which one? The last one?
The last one, yeah. There's still an open question.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just scrolling through it.
I don't know if you can answer it or if it's.
No, I can't see it for some reason.
Okay, so it's what are the most discussed LVD topics within EY? Are there still open, not agreed topics among LVD consultants?
Yeah, I cannot speak for EI yet, but within the HAS consultant group, we have, as I said, we have a document in preparation in which we tackle those, let's say, difficult questions or interpretation issues, possible interpretation issues among our HAS consultants. As I said, we try to publish the document as soon as possible with the help of the European Commission. They are pushing us to publish it soon. But the questions are coming, so it's a moving target. As I said it also in my presentation, sometimes an issue can be a moving target. For instance, for normative references. Some questions come up and then others come up due to by this question to solve it. Other questions come up. So it's quite a challenge to publish this document.
I see a specific question about the revision of 60335-1. I would invite you to contact your CCMC project manager for this. You will, yes, please contact your CCMC project manager to have a status update on this 60335-1.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a question to me, Frederick.
No, not to you, Ivan. I was sorry, Ivan. I was answering a question from the chat. There was a question about a standard, about the edition, a possible new edition of a standard, and invited the attendee to contact his or her CCMC project manager to get the answer.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I see the question now. Thank you.
And then there's this one that's probably for you, Ivan, about capacitor standards for power electronics capacitors.
Capacitor standards, yes. Which kind of capacitor standards? Because there are so many. Here it is. It's no.
Question from Rainer. And I guess it's a follow-up question about if a given standard is the applicability of a product, if it's in the range of the LVD. I guess it's a follow-up question about that. Do you see it?
No.
So it's I will read it for you. But there is only one capacitor standard for power electronic capacitors. So what about this standard? Cannot be harmonized?
Okay, so unfortunately, I didn't do this Haas assessment on that power capacitor. I'm not aware. Maybe Geert or any other Haas consultant has experience with it. I don't know. I think that this question cannot be answered because I'm not familiar with the standard. And also, if we look for specific answers to specific assessments, I think this is not the right occasion to do that because some of the answers can be very complex and on-the-spot answering of questions without discussions with the Haas consultants or with the European Commissions is can be very demanding. So I would suggest that if the TC has specific questions about their assessment to address them to EI and then we will be involved or whatever who will be involved.
You can request a meeting with the Haas consultant. Maybe it's a good to refer to that actually also because I saw that there was a comment about that someone said it's still difficult to request meetings. I mean, we have worked quite a bit on this over the last 2 years to smoothen the process. So if you use the tool that was also shown in the presentation, we should, the team immediately should in principle immediately bring you into contact with the Haas consultant. And we have really stressed the Haas consultant that they should confirm quickly whether they and when they are available. So yeah, I'm not aware about structural issues in this regard. If you're experiencing any issues, please reach out to Haas support so we can look into that. But to my knowledge, the system generally works okay currently. And we strongly encourage that actually also to request meetings because as also mentioned by Emilia earlier, we think this is important to have these meetings to clarify the findings from assessment reports. There have been less meetings than under the previous contract also because there was some issues at the time and that may have created some misunderstandings and some people thought it was actually not allowed anymore to have meetings. This is certainly not the case. So if you have questions or would like to discuss the assessment report with the consultant, we definitely encourage you to reach out and plan a meeting.
Thank you. My impression also is that when we have a request from a TC, we usually react on it quite quickly. And I didn't see any TCs which has to wait a long time for a meeting. So I think for us, as consult, is important that the TC understands our comments clearly and to move further in this way so that the system works correctly.
I will reply to the question from Thomas about if there would be a mandate for stationary lithium-ion batteries, would the HAS consultant be ready for such a project? If not, how is the process for a product that is covered the first time? I invite you to contact your CCMC project manager for this type of question. It is out of the scope of the webinar today. Today it's really about the LVD and the challenges faced by the TCs within the LVD. So I invite you to contact your CCMC project manager to get an answer for that. Thank you. I see a remark from Rainer about he disagrees with the statement about contacting the HAS consultant. Rainer, if you have difficulties reaching a HAS consultant, please ask your CCMC project manager, contact HAS support, as Dan said, and put CCMC in copy so that we can help you. But normally, if you request a meeting with a HAS consultant, you should have the possibility to get a meeting. I witnessed it just recently. If you still have challenges having a meeting with a HAS consultant, please contact your CCMC PM or HST at CEN-CENELEC.eu. We will help you. But normally, you should be able to have a meeting with a HAS consultant to discuss the comments from an assessment report. Yeah, important remark. You can have a meeting with a HAS consultant only to discuss comments from an assessment report. If you don't have an assessment report, you cannot have a meeting with a HAS consultant. So it's really in the frame of discussing the comment following an assessment report. Then you can have a meeting with a HAS consultant. But if you have challenges with that, please contact us and we will help you with that. Thank you. Well, I see the two last questions from Thomas is coming back to the question is for a standard under the LVD because such batteries are within the scope. Thomas, maybe you send your question to your CCMC project manager, and then we can see because it looks like it's a bit specific. Maybe send your question to your CCMC project manager or to HSC at CEN-CENELEC.eu. And then we will see how to address the question, and we will contact. We will forward it to the HAS consultant to give you a better support. But this is maybe very specific, and it will be difficult to address your question during the Q&A. Thank you. I see a question from Andreas. Could we invite consultants to TC workgroup meetings in order to make documents already compliant earlier in the process? I don't think it's possible, but I will leave the floor to Dan to complement my answer. So normally, a meeting with a HAS consultant is foreseen only in the frame of an assessment report. So if you don't have an assessment report, normally you cannot have a meeting with a HAS consultant. Of course, if you have an assessment report, it's possible to invite the HAS consultant within the TC or workgroup meeting, but you cannot invite the HAS consultant before to kind of help you draft your standard. You can only invite the HAS consultant within a TC or workgroup meeting following an assessment report to discuss and clarify the comments. And Dan, if you want to complement my answer.
I can only confirm that the reason is that a core element of the whole HAS system is that the HAS consultant should be independent from the standard development process. So he should not be involved in drafting the standard together with TC. He assesses the standard independently and then can of course explain his or her assessment. But the idea is not to be involved in drafting the standard. So that's an explicit requirement also from the European Commission since we started this project.
Thank you.
If there is another meeting where you think a HAS consultant could be part of, then it could be requested, I may add, that you could still request it. And there have been some exceptions where he's not, or he or she is not directly involved in actually drafting the standard, but would attend a meeting that could be relevant for the standardization process. This has happened in some cases, but these are exceptions, and we would need to have the approval from the Commission. So that's important to note that it's not us then who would decide that we need to propose to the Commission. But as a general rule, it's linked to the assessment reports.
Thank you, Dan. And then there's another question from Luca. I think this is addressed to Ivan. Is it possible to read the draft guideline that you, as consultant, want to publish with support of the EC? Where will it be published? So maybe Ivan, you can take it, but I don't think we will be able to see it before it's finalized.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so when it is finalized, we will, CEN and CENELEC will circulate it to all the TCs, and as well we will make it available somewhere on our website. But yes, as soon as this document is available, obviously we will circulate it to all the TCs, and we will make it available to the widest audience possible. Is there any, so the three questions left in the chat, I think we kind of addressed them. And for Thomas, yes, please contact your CCMC project manager with a detailed question, and then we will try to address it in the best possible way, because again, it looks quite specific. Is there any other question? I propose we wait still 5 minutes.
Yeah, there is one hand raised since a while. I don't know if it's a mistake or if this person really wants to take the floor. You're Endish. Can you have the floor?
Yeah, sure.
You can unmute yourself should you want to raise your question. If not, might be an error. Is it maybe a good moment, Frederic, to launch the poll? I have a short poll asking feedback to the attendees. So it's only 3 questions asking you to give your feedback on the webinar, and we use the answers to improve our webinars in the future. So thank you very much in advance for submitting your replies. And then if Jörg is still there, he's free to talk. He's unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
Here's Jörg is speaking. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I didn't understand the question. Cool.
We've just noted that you raised your hand, so we were wondering if you had a question.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Not by intention, sorry.
No problem. And by the way, some people asked about presentation and recording. We will share that with you later today. So indeed, you will receive an email with that information.
So I don't see any new questions, so I propose we end the webinar here. If you have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to contact us, hsc@cencenelec.eu, or contact your CCMC project manager. We will be happy to help you. And of course, if you have challenges, having a meeting with us consultant or any type of challenges, please contact us. We'll be very happy to help you. Thank you for your attendance this morning. Thanks to Anastasios from the European Commission. Thank you for Emilia, Dan from EY for your support. Thank you, Ivan, and all the HAS consultants in the background helping us for the webinar this morning. I hope this was useful for you. As Elle said, we will share the link to the training material and to the recording after the meeting. Thanks again a lot. I wish you a very nice day and see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.